Good afternoon, good evening, greetings to everybody from around the world. We are based in the UK and welcome to Breaking the Internet. Takedown strategies used by cyber criminals. I don't like to call them hackers, everyone, so for the record, hackers are good folks also. Cyber criminals are, like everybody else, just bad humans or humans who don't agree with what is the norm. So, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for joining us. We have several hundred people registered for this webinar, which is really good, over 200 and more, and still counting. Remember a couple of things. Please switch off your mobiles. You don't want any distractions. If there is a fire, you can always come back and listen in to the webinar. Remember, it's recorded and available, so do save your life. And please use the Bright Talk interactive question screen to ask questions from myself and the panelists that we have today. That's it for now. Final thing, do give us your valuable feedback. Constructive would be much appreciated, and we will definitely strive to improve how we deliver this in educational and informative content. Moving on, we're talking a little bit about the panelists. The blue turban, the individual on that left is myself. You can meet me at InfoSec next week. Just grab the blue turban. And I'm going to talk about, let Gavin introduce himself and Nosh introduce himself. Gavin, over to you, sir.
Hi, Amar. Thanks for having me. Very pleased to be here. My name's Gavin Wilson, and I work at Nominet, specifically on our new product section, but that's primarily around DNS analytics. So I love DNS. I love DNS in volume and all the interesting things that it can tell us.
Excellent, Gavin. Thank you so much. Nosh, over to you, sir. Brief introduction about what you can tell everybody you do, not what you can't tell everybody you do. Nosh. Nosh.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, hi.
I can hear you now. You were encrypting all the communications. You need to decrypt all your communication.
Decrypting. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Naushad. I'm a IT security specialist and also dark and deep web researcher, and they say master of hacker. No, not sure about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just put master hacker to make you sound more cool, buddy. But Naushad is a good guy, works with, he's a good guy, he's a good lad, very, very informed. So everyone, like I said, thank you. Keep the questions coming in. And there's one question already come in that says, why are hackers able to take over security cameras? Okay, we shall answer that a little bit later, but I wanted to focus. Okay, sorry about this. I wanted to focus on one of the things I do when preparing a presentation is I work on alternative titles. Very close to my heart. It's something that I am known for. This is to give you a little bit of insight into how I prepare for a presentation. Some of the thoughts that go through my mind. One is snapping the internet. That's one thing I could think about. The other one is don't touch that. If you do, you will switch off the internet. And the other one, which a lot of us really like, including Gavin and Nosh, is this one, actually. The importance of DNS could not be overstressed by looking at this particular Jenga game. If you do pull that out, the likelihood is pretty much everything will fall down. One kind of quick update, please do bookmark the Cyber Management Alliance channel. On Bright Talk, you will search for Cyber Management Alliance. Not sure why you are seeing that Cyber Management Alliance, not really clear. Also, right now, many people are already downloading the attachments. We have two wonderful attachments, one from our partner Nominet, who we are working with on this one, and that is an infographic that Nominet has produced. Some really insightful insights on that one, and one from Cyber Management Alliance, which is a DNS mind map, which we put together for DNS. So please, we have several people already downloading. You can download this later also. And then finally, you can also look at previous webinars from the Cyber Management Alliance channel. We're going to dive straight in after this. Okay, this is roughly what most people think about DNS, if they do ever think. It's right at the bottom end of the measuring scale, or just a way to kind of try to portray what most people think. In my opinion, and many professionals that I speak to, DNS must be given much more importance than it currently is. There's something else that I wanted to share about before we get into a little bit more detail. If this was Nominet in the UK, Nominet and Gavin is going to talk about Nominet's role in the UK and how it plays a significant role in the UK infrastructure, the UK-wide infrastructure for DNS. But if this was DNS, the light bulbs that shine a light within what would be a pretty much very dark cyberspace. And if you switch it off, I think this is the only way I could think about representing what would happen to the internet. There would be pretty much darkness. Unless you knew exactly where you wanted to go, you would be stumbling along without accessing any content, any particular website. Gavin, I'm going to give it over to you for a few minutes, if you don't mind, and explain to us what is Turing, what does Nominet do with the UK infrastructure, and you know, how you play that crucial role within pretty much all of UK's .uk and the whole DNS.
Thanks, Amar. Much appreciated. So we at Nominet are, the sort of technical term is, a provider of authoritative DNS. We are with a definitive holder of all of the answers from a DNS perspective about the .uk zones. And the significance of that, obviously this is quite a technical audience, but I often find it's helpful to put it in non-technical terms. Whenever you type a .uk domain name into your browser will pass that along to the operating system. That query will be submitted to the ISP, and then your ISP is going to do a whole bunch of DNS lookups from a whole bunch of authoritative resources. You'll start with the root DNS servers, and then you'll go to other authoritative sources depending on which zone it is you're after. But if you're looking for a .uk, your ISP will at some point interrogate Nominet servers, and really what Nominet does is we're sort of the glue that tell ISPs, well, if you want a .uk and you want a Google is the domain name that you're after, here are the addresses for Google's name.
Gavin,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. I was going to say, and one or two members of the audience also have said, please could you move yourself closer to the mic?
Oh, right. Okay. I sorry about that.
Yeah.
Is this a better line? Do you want me to just repeat what I said, or shall I?
If you don't mind, just summarize what you said and just move a little bit closer so that your voice is a bit more louder. Thank you.
No problem. I'll keep myself close to the mic. Sorry about that. Effectively, another way to summarize it is that Nominet glues the UK part of the internet onto the wider internet. Were we to fail in that particular role, then from an end user's perspective, you wouldn't be able to look at any more .uk sites. So it's a fairly critical and fundamental role. And what that means as well, it's not just the case of registering domain names, which is sort of really our core business. What we also do is we help to route and shape DNS traffic and provide part of that answer chain that your ISP will be doing on your behalf every time you do a DNS query. Either issued manually from from your browser or via some kind of software that needs to find the IP address of another computer. So it's a simple technology, and yet you've got this fantastic distributed database that is really it's really core to our lives, but it's also not particularly well understood, really. And so what Nominet have done, and this is where Turing comes in. historically, we see about 4 to 5 billion DNS queries, again, hitting our infrastructure every day. And about, really a few years ago, we decided that we wanted to get a better understanding of what these queries are and what they're up to. So we developed a platform we call Turing, which is a bulk DNS analytics platform. It allows us to take bulk DNS data, capture packets on the wire. So I'm going to tweak my microphone a little bit. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, hopefully that should be a bit better now. It allows us to capture. Thank you. I think it's my phone case. It allows us to take bulk DNS data, capture it on the wire, write it to disk, compress it and compact it, and then we've built a bunch of analytics around that, machine learning, threat intelligence correlations, and a few other sort of tricks of the trade. What that's allowed us to do is to take billions of DNS packets and really pick out the 1 or 2 signals that are of interest to both us and the sort of safety and security of the wider internet. And we've taken that capability and we're now taking that to market. So that sort of summarizes Turing and Nominet's role, hopefully. So Mark, should we maybe move to the next slide?
Yes, thank you. Gavin, thank you for that. So the question is, and this is what we were going to talk about as the main focus of the webinar today, is how do you pull the plug? And we're not going to give too many ideas away. Obviously, you could just go in and pull the plug. This is not a webinar on doing anything wrong. This is an informative and educational webinar. And what I wanted you to share, Gavin, is how Nominet discovered, and this is the only image I could find of a skull that was transparent and relatively interesting looking, the packet of death. Before we go into the packet of death, I wanted to discuss this with the people listening in, and this is where it gets interesting. So everyone, your time to ask questions, but your time to also focus in a little bit. Nominet discovered some stuff, which is Gavin is going to discuss with us. But the focus of this packet of death was in this particular TCP, or rather DNS packet header, taken from tcpibguide.com. All credits to them. And before I go to Gavin, we have Nosh, obviously, and Nosh is itching to talk a little bit. We could hold several sessions with Nosh on what he does on ethical hacking. But Nosh, on packet headers, how excited do you get when you get the ability to manipulate and generate malformed TCP IP headers? Give us a little bit of insight before we go back to Gavin.
You see, when we have a packages, when you look at the package header of the information, most of the SIM system or IDS systems will allow us to investigate packages on the log packages. So I don't know if we can differentiate between the logs and package headers. So the package header is the most important part of the routing protocol that contain the way it's coming from, where it's going, how much the package sizes. So it is really crucial for us to investigate the package response code on the side of what it carried inside the response code in the header of the systems. So this is a very, very important part of the system, that way the analytics can go for any investigation, any solution to the poisoning or any solution to the attack. The ingress has to be in the response code. It is very vital for us to investigate on the header of the response code.
Excellent. Buddy, thank you so much, Nosh. Gavin, tell me a little bit more about this, and then the next slide. Why is the response code the main focus of today's talk?
The response code in this particular instance is one of interest to us. So one of the reasons we built our analytical platform is really it was kind of a bit of field of dreams, if you will. We wanted to find unusual things. We wanted to go and look for the stuff that shouldn't exist. And really, as we sort of transition to the next slide, we'll be able to show you an image of the day we discovered something that shouldn't exist. And the thing that really alerted to us was an unusual response that was sent by our DNS servers. So I'm just going to roll back a minute, and talk a little bit about the DNS server in question. So historically, we've run a DNS server called Bind, which a lot of you may or may not have heard of, but it's a name server, or rather it's a piece of name server technology that's pretty fundamental to the internet. Lots of people run it. It's prevalent in many different organizations. Now within DNS you have two fundamental modes of operation. You've got recursive DNS, or sometimes known as caching DNS, and you have authoritative DNS. But I like to sum it up as you've got DNS which asks questions, and that is the recursive side, and you have DNS which answers questions, and that is the authoritative side. So Bind, which is the name server technology in question, that can run in both modes. It can either ask questions or it can provide answers. Now, because Nominet provide authoritative DNS, i.e. answers, we just run it in authoritative mode. So we know, what's going to happen from a DNS protocol point of view, but we also understand what sorts of DNS requests that we should be getting, and more importantly, the types of responses that we should be sending. So there's a protocol within DNS called dynamic updates, which allows you to insert records into DNS. Now, obviously, from an authoritative perspective, we don't want just anyone to be able to update our own DNS records, because that would obviously be incredibly bad. So we have that disabled. But as part of that dynamic updates protocol, there is the ability which allows within that protocol for prerequisites to be specified, i.e. if this domain exists, then do that. And because we don't use that mechanism, and thus the related response of NX RR set, we should never see that sent as a response. But as we sort of move to the next slide, and maybe this is a good point to do so, Amar, in January 2011, we saw exactly that. We saw exactly that response. And I mentioned that we built a platform to collect bulk data analytics. This was a single packet amongst billions and billions of packets. So you can imagine, given the inquisitive nature of our researchers, it kind of caught their attention. But this is exactly why we built. This is exactly why we built the platform.
I'm going to interrupt you and just rewind a little bit. Okay. So the authoritative DNS and then the recursive DNS, the answer and the question, right? You run in answer mode, authoritative mode, and a dynamic DNS section of this, right? Now,
exactly.
Just expand a little bit on that. So you observed the NX, RR set in the response code. From where? Sorry, did you see it coming from somebody, or what was it? Just expand a little.
We picked up one of our servers, in this instance, a Bind server, sending this response to a client request. So it was a response generated by our servers, and that's why it caught our attention, because based on the modes that we're running in and the definitions of the protocol, it shouldn't happen, basically. It was an anomaly.
And this red dot that we now see on the screen, this was what kind of one packet anomaly that your researchers picked up?
Exactly. So we searched for the types of responses that we wouldn't expect to see in our traffic, in this case NXRR set, and this is exactly what they discovered, a single packet, which is quite unusual.
And you said, sorry, just want to make it clear so that everyone comes away learning good stuff, and this is all very useful. What does the dynamic part of this actually allow? Automatic insertion of records is what you said?
Yeah, exactly. So the way to think about DNS is that it's really just a massively distributed database. And whereas whereas if you had a SQL database, you might write an insert clause. The way in which you push your records into DNS is through a protocol called dynamic updates. Now, we wouldn't allow, we've obviously configured our DNS name servers to allow us to put dynamic records into our authoritative DNS servers on behalf of the end client.
The customer, right. So if I run DNS with you and I have updated cm-alliance.com to a different IP address, you use the dynamic update protocol to update your authoritative servers to reflect that change.
Exactly, yes. But as you would imagine, this is not sort of functionality that would be enabled for just anyone to do, because if anyone could insert anything into authoritative DNS,
yes.
You know, and indeed we'll come on to that later in the later in the deck.
No, sure. So what you are saying is, what you saw, if I may, you saw a rogue inserter, if I may, trying to insert a record which was not supposed to happen. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah, exactly. It was someone attempting to use functionality that was disabled, and the server responding in a way that might indicate that it was enabled, but it was anomalous because all of that stuff was disabled, and you know, so it caught our attention straight away.
Excellent. This is very useful. Thank you, and very informative. Okay. Then what happened?
And this is really where the plot thickens, because you know, at this point we've seen this packet, and at this point we're obviously concerned because it appears that the name server software isn't functioning as we would expect. So what one of our researchers did is he wrote a Perl script to try and rebuild the sort of the session in DNS that led to that particular response being issued. But in the process, he managed to mangle the packets that he was sending to the name servers. And once he built his script, and you know, thinking that this was just anomalous, you know, we were obviously concerned, but we didn't really know what was going to happen. What he did was he fired his script directly at one of our production authoritative name servers. You know, he tested it in production because, as far as he was concerned, it was a malformed DNS packet. Well, guess what? Find is designed to handle these all the time. So what's the worst that can happen? Well, in this particular case, to his horror, the server that he fired that packet at rebooted. So
okay.
So that was somewhat unexpected. So by crafting this malformed UDP packet, he was able to reboot a name server. Now, the name server in question forms part of a constellation. So we have, we obviously have more than one name server in production, and really since this particular time, the way in which we advertise our services has become far more robust and far more scalable, if you will. But obviously, watching a production name server reboot is a bit of a cold sweat. But what he'd effectively crafted was a packet that could reboot any instance of a bind name server that had, that was operating with this flaw. And given that bind is used in enterprises, ISPs, other authoritative DNS, providers, this was, he discovered a 0-day. And really, we calculated that all a malicious attacker would have to do is really start flooding the internet with these packets and watch as large swathes of the the DNS infrastructure effectively stops responding because the servers are rebooting. And what do you do at that point? You're stuck.
So take a step back. Sorry, we're gonna revisit this very briefly because we want to make sure everyone listening in is informed and educated on this. What was the Perl script? So you figured that this red dot showed up. I'm just going to move the screen back. You figured that this particular anomalous single packet showed up with the NXRR set attribute in the response code.
Yep.
What was the Perl script designed to do?
It was designed to rebuild the conditions in DNS that led to that response being set. So we took the packet headers that we'd recorded in the script platform, and we rebuilt those as we attempted to effectively recreate that session in DNS, create that packet using a Perl script. So it wasn't a particularly big Perl script, but in terms of lines of code versus bang for buck, we got a pretty good deal out of it.
Wow. Okay. So you attempted to recreate that, and in that particular attempt, you discovered pretty much a method of bringing down pretty much as much of the internet as anyone could within a very short period of time.
Absolutely. Now, I will caveat that by saying that you would have to be running that version of bind everywhere. But, not everyone runs bind. There are other name server technologies out there. But the wider point is this. In the wrong hands, they could have brought down a significant proportion of the internet. And really just going back to the original concept of, how to break the internet. Yeah. If I was feeling really malicious and I could get my hands on a number of these zero-day flaws across various different name server providers, that is how I would do it. I would target the DNS infrastructure, and then I could hit ISPs, I could hit authoritative DNS servers, and you could take whole countries, out of the that's how dependent we are on this 30-year-old protocol.
Yep, and I think Naushad also is our good friend on the line. Also, Naush, what you and I see when we do penetration testing for clients is often DNS and NTP are the protocols that most people don't necessarily focus on at all. Banks and others may have a bit more focus, but the majority of organizations and people, I used to build bind servers when I was younger. I'm still very young for the record, but folks, I used to build a lot of bind servers, but I think a lot of things today just work. So the actual focus on the ultimate embryonic or basic plumbing is not as much as it should be. But okay, just moving on now. Thank you for this. This is really insightful. And hopefully everyone listening in, if you do share this with others, they can listen in, because this is why we believe in informational and educational webinars. Now moving on, Gavin, massive attack using IoT. How did this happen? I know many may already know some details about this, but can you give us a little bit more insight?
Yes, certainly. So I did see one of the questions at the beginning of the session about why are hackers able to take over security cameras. And this is I can hopefully address that question with these slides. So what Amar's showing you there is kind of an average day for Nominet's traffic. Obviously the scale's slightly small, but typically we see about 25,000 queries per second. Now, if you cast your mind back to 2016, there was an attack on a company called Dyn. Now, they're also an authoritative provider of DNS services. They kind of sit a bit further downstream. They sit effectively downstream from providers like Nominet. We would point people to, Dyn's servers. If they're after, maybe Airbnb, Amazon, Imager, Reddit, some of the fairly well-known and major sites on the internet. Now, as well as being a provider of authoritative DNS, they are they provide some mitigation against DDoS as well. And what happened in 2016 is that somebody used a botnet of compromised IoT devices. These devices were compromised by a piece of malware called Mirai to basically corral these devices into a huge botnet and basically attack Dyn. And they managed to take down a significant proportion of Dyn's servers. Now in 2017, we observe a similar attack with either part of the Mirai botnet or a similar methodology, and that's what Amar's just showing you there. So what you see there on the left-hand side was kind of an average day for Nominet, and then we jumped from our average 25,000 DNS queries per second across our infrastructure to 1.2 million DNS queries a second, and that's the point at which I kind of spat out my coffee. Now the reason...
Sorry, hold on, Gavin, I need to interrupt you, sorry. You were there when this happened on the screen.
Yeah, we just released a new version of the platform, and I spent a lot of time kind of looking at it, and I thought there was a bug initially, but very quickly I realized that it wasn't a bug, and this was legitimate traffic that we were seeing. Now, DDoS isn't something we see a lot of within Nominet's traffic, but what was really interesting about this particular attack is the fact that we saw it at all. And I mentioned before that you have like ISPs asking questions on behalf of their end clients. ISPs ask the authoritative sources to get the IP addresses of the servers their clients are effectively trying to look up. But what they also do is that they cache. They cache the answers within DNS. So once they've asked the question once, they will cache that answer for a period of time, and that's how they see good performance for their clients. And also, it's be a waste of computational resources otherwise. So what was really interesting about the questions that were being asked of our servers is that the people asking the questions, or rather the ISPs or the IP addresses interrogating our servers, weren't obeying the normal rules of caching within DNS. Now, our servers implement something in DNS called response rate limiting, which is a way to protect the people being attacked downstream. And what that means is that if someone's asking the same question over and over and over again, we'll ask them to come back and create a TCP connection. Most DNS requests are done over UDP. But if we're getting the same question asked over and over again, DNS as a protocol allows for TCP to be established, because due to the nature of UDP, packets get lost. So when we saw these spikes, we were surprised. We didn't see caching being obeyed, and what we saw was a flood of traffic coming primarily from China, attacking a bank, in this case Lloyd's Bank, and what you see there is a botnet attacking Lloyd's via distributed denial of service.
Wow.
Now what's
you said 1.several million queries per second.
Yeah, 1.2 million DNS queries per second hitting our infrastructure, and went on for a reasonable chunk of time. Now none of our infrastructure went down, and we did shield the downstream victim by dropping a lot of this traffic, but it was a significant amount. But you will also recall as well that the intended victim did experience some downtime, because it kind of made the press, because they weren't just getting attacked via the .uk namespace. It was lots of different namespaces, and lots of different TLDs pointing to a central TLD. So the UK part might point to the COM part, etc. But just to address the initial question as to why all these devices get compromised, it's kind of been a known issue for a while that people are people are developing and deploying a whole bunch of IoT devices out there, and it's really an arms race at the moment as to who can get their devices onto the market quickest. And unfortunately, and unfortunately, security is a little bit of an afterthought. So that's why you get instances where certain models of camera or baby monitor, they're internet connected, because we all want to be able to monitor our smart homes from a mobile phone or whatnot. But they all come out of the packet with the same default credentials, or the manufacturers don't implement a patching policy. So it's depressingly benign stuff that kind of leads to these compromises. It's, not patching and weak security out the box, and it's very similar to a lot of the issues, going back to, I guess, the days of Windows 98 and Windows XP. Security was an afterthought because this sort of hostile environment.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, so...
Very briefly, sorry about this, Gavin. We just have, just to follow up a little bit on time. So we've got quite a lot of other things to cover on this. And a polite reminder to everyone, please download the attachments. We've got an infographic from Nominet, which is actually quite interesting. And we've got a DNS mind map from Cyber Management Alliance. Remember to ask questions, please, and also leave feedback towards the end. We've still got some interesting things we're going to cover, so please stay here. We're going to talk about the UK Government National Cybersecurity Centre. Briefly, on the unfair, I would say, because of the way this was done, hijacking of a Brazilian bank. Naushad, if you don't mind, very quickly, how easy is it to root all the bank's online customers?
Oh...
There's one you can say very easy.
If you just before we go to right in the thing, I wanted you guys to remember that in 2008 what Indonesia did for Google. Anybody can remember that?
Go on.
Yeah, so Indonesia they wanted to block the Google. So it's the way the DNS work. It's a friendly suggestions. It's like a relationship. When you're in relationship, we base each other in trust base. So the DNS protocol work is such a mechanism similar to that. So what Indonesia did, they changed the DNS settings and able to take down the Google for 30 minutes. It went millions of pounds. And the same year, if you remember what Pakistan did for the YouTube. So it's nothing, it's simple protocol. There's very old, 30 years old system we are using in DNS way. Like Kevin was explaining how the system is working around. It really come down to monitoring the system of infrastructure. But when you go to nitty-gritty on deep down analytics point of view, how we can defend it's creating the dropping artificial packages, package mechanism. So it's come down to that. It's the main point of view. How we can defend. It's really up to how the system was developed. So
I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nosh. Gavin, a brief insight on this. How easy would it be to do this today within the UK infrastructure?
So I'll just maybe Amar, I'll just touch briefly on the ecosystem. So when you register, if you want to start a bank, you need to register a domain name. You'll do that via a registrar, someone like GoDaddy or equivalent, someone that you might be familiar with, has seen advertised on the TV. And depending on where on the internet you want that domain name to exist, they will talk to the registry. Now, if either the registry or the registrar are compromised by an attacker, the attacker can effectively take over your DNS records, and rather than pointing the DNS records at your infrastructure, they can point it at their infrastructure. So your customers think they're looking up your bank, your services, but actually they're going to a phishing site. Now, in terms of how easy it is to do on the UK side, I would hope pretty difficult. But if you're in a business or if you have an enterprise, you really want to take a very close look at the security controls implemented by your registrar. Are you using secure passwords to manage those DNS records? Does your registrar have a good record of security? And is the registry that you're putting these records into, do they have a good track record of security? Do they have locks? Do they have products that allow you to lock down your records so that the B2B system between the registrar and the registry can't be changed? Because that's the sort of level of thinking you want to be looking at. You want to lock those records down and you want to have secure passwords. Otherwise, anyone can, if the registrar gets compromised, you can hack them, you can change those records, and that's exactly what happened to the bank.
Absolutely.
No, excellent. So just to confirm, we'll talk about the key takeaways later, but basically check who you are dealing with and check on their previous record and their processes on how easy do they make the ability to change DNS records. Because if it's too easy, then people could easily exploit that process.
Exactly. I mean, have you got two-factor authentication when you interact with your registrar services? Things like that. But also as well, and I think key to this is, have you got monitoring around the DNS records that you have published to the wider internet? If those change, do you have alerts and triggers that fire off to your incident response system? Because they shouldn't change often, and if they do, and it's not due to planned maintenance, then that you really want to take a look at that very quickly.
Excellent. So, Norsh, I'm going to come back to you because Bright Talk shuts off after a certain time. But I wanted to touch on domain-generated algorithms, something some people may know about, but I just want to make sure everyone is aware of this. And the DGA, as its short form, its role in helping cyber criminals pretty much get away with very bad stuff. So what I have here is an example of the dire malware domains. We can share the links of how we got this, but pretty much, Nominet also monitors this. I know many others do. But in terms of DGA, how does Nominet or how does anybody, get around this headache? Because it's the ability to generate unique, weird, as you can see on the screen here, domains on the fly, and the malware and the criminal have their agreed seeds that they use to generate all of this. How do you go about detecting and protecting against this?
Yes, I see this type of attack over and over of the victim side to be used to generating multiple like junk kind of domain names or requests from the algorithms methodology. How we can defend it, it is all come down to how you implement your rating, how you implement your hosting in multiple. I mean, it's all come down to the rating. If dropping unartificial packages, unartificial requests, it's how you come down to your log monitoring. How this all related to is your IDS systems and IPS system. How it's a configuration of last time when we testing one of the major companies that we found this kind of signature inside their systems, and the protocol to defend is to set up the rate limit for unorthodox or unused domain or DMARC and stuff like that. So this is a basic principle for creating that.
Gavin, how does Turing how does Nominet, do you guys work with this? How do you protect against this?
So we sort of built some analytics into the Turing platform, used Markov chains to pull these out of the sort of billions of requests that we might see. And really, I kind of sum it up in terms of the functionality. It's the probability that the domain in question is not human readable, because that you can use the sort of the randomly generated attributes of those DGAs against them. Most domains are human readable, so the minute you spot the stuff that isn't, it's either, in my experience, either someone accessing a CDN, the CDNs use a similar methodology, or it's suspicious traffic that is probably indicative of a DGA.
Okay. But it is still very effective for cyber attackers, isn't it, and cyber criminals?
This is regular. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, port 53 on your firewall is a very attractive port to attackers, because this allows you, the DGA mechanism allows you to effectively move your command and control infrastructure around on a day-to-day basis, so that it's difficult to track. And by hiding your sort of command and control lookup on DNS, no one really monitors your DNS. No one really monitors port 53. So I guess the takeaway would be you might want to take a look at what's going on port 53, because it's always on. You kind of need it to make the internet work. Yeah, it's usually a pretty open port, but it's worth a look to see what else is going through it.
Exactly.
Thank you, Gavin. Nosh, briefly to you. You do a lot of analysis of these kind of bad things developed by cyber criminals, and you see DGA constantly being used. Yes or no?
Yes, 100%. This is one of the major ignorant part that we can say. Thank you, Kevin. You remind me of port 53. Yes, this is one of the great sport of DNS. You see, many organizations, they don't even know what's going on inside the 453 log systems. So I encourage you guys to dig into that and then check the firewall rule. It's easy blocking as well. When you see the IP address coming getting this kind of request from the DNS, and it's most probably one IP address. It's not, they don't use for multiple like a botnet kind of thing. Simply one IP address. The killer switch to block the IP address. Simple is that, easy way to do that.
No, thanks for that. Folks who are listening in, please pay a little bit of attention here. And I love the National Cybersecurity Center. I hope they're listening in today. They probably are monitoring every packet. Just kidding. Oh, they probably are anyway. The point is, I wanted to say kudos to they've put out a document which you can download from our previous webinar on DNS, or you can find it on the internet. It's 1 year on by the National Cybersecurity Center. It's a very good document, and actually in this document, they also talk about DNS, and what you see here is some snippets from that document. Is what about unknown DGA? One of the analysts run on the names requested is analysis. Analytics is Markov, is what Gavin touched on, right? This test indicates whether a set of names requested is likely to be part of a domain-generated algorithm. I have an issue with DGA, just for a quick rant. It should be algorithm-generated domains, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, we'll stick with DGA for now. But I highly recommend everyone listening in to please download this document. It's a really, really good document. There is stuff like this on how the total of blocks were done by DNS on the particular dates, and the DNS's role in things like over here. On average, 1 in 6 of the organizations using the DNS service, in fact, by Nominet, the government calls out Nominet specifically. The service has had some security issues discovered that required investigation and remediation. The document is called 1 year on. They go on to say things like proactively analyzing the service of the DNS service to help them understand their cyber security posture. They also say something really interesting. In the last 6 months of the year, 10 customers had confirmed malware infections, right? And after looking at the DNS traffic leaving their network. So this is quite important to understand. And we could go on and on. There is Naushad had prepared quite a lot of stuff on some other attacks, but we are running a little bit out of time, so we want to make sure we get everything in. Very quick one on DGA, Gavin, domain-generated algorithms. Is Markov Analytics the only thing available? I know there are some other stuff on the internet. Why does the NCSC call out this particular thing here? I'm just moving back to it. Give me 1 second, please. This one here, Markov Analytics, analysis.
I think the reason it's so interesting is because regardless of the sort of type of DGA, regardless of the algorithm you're using to generate these randomly generated screens, they will trigger against this Markov heuristic. So it's that sort of non-human readable piece that we're looking for. Now, there are, of course, as well, other DGAs out there which use dictionary. They use dictionary lookups for their sort of DGA generation, if you will. But most folks still use randomly generated lists of strings, basically.
Okay, and as Nosh said, he does a lot of analysis of the bad stuff, and he continues to see DGA being used very actively. Correct, Noshad?
That's right, correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
just
someone, sorry, go
oh,
on.
sorry. I was just say one thing to add. One thing I find so interesting about this is the information contained in that DNS packet, that DGA that you're observing, and just what that gives you is the ability to fingerprint specific malware variants on your network without having to know anything about either the network architecture or and you can even in some cases find out which endpoint is actually infected just by looking in DNS, which I think is very, very powerful.
Very interesting. Thank you, Gavin. Okay, quick, the couple of questions coming in. Where is the article by Dr. Ian Levy? I checked the entries. I will put this document on this particular webinar also in the next 10, 20 minutes after we are done. Or you can go to the Cyber Management Alliance channel and look at the previous webinar we've done on the basics of DNS and download it from there. So folks, whoever are listening in, I will make this document available. BrightTalk allows me to upload additional documents. So maybe within an hour or two, please come back to this webinar and you can download it. I will upload it once this webinar is over. It allows me to upload even after the webinar is over. So I will do that. Dr. Ian Levy, it's from the National Cybersecurity 1 Year On. A very insightful document. If you can't sleep or if you just like to read a lot of documents, what this impressed me was with the amount of focus that that the NCSC is calling out on the importance of DNS and DNS's role in actually improving cybersecurity, the posture, right? This is really critical because most people talk about the basics. They talk about passwords, identity, access management. It's all great. I'm not rubbishing any of them, but I think it's really kudos, like I said in my thing here, kudos to the NCSC for basically giving a really good document. It is a bit technical, but highly recommended to read and understand what the UK government is doing. So well done to the government on this one. We are running out of time. We want to make sure everyone listening in gets maximum value. So I'm going to move on to takeaways. And I think we'll have to hold a separate hacking DNS webinar only with Nosh and a couple of other cyber hackers and myself. A couple of takeaways. Okay, Gavin, you first, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what it says on the tin, this one. If you guys are publishing records in DNS and these are records related to your enterprise or personal sites, whatever, monitor them, keep an eye on them, watch for any changes that you weren't expecting.
Okay. But how, can you do that on your own? Are you dependent on the provider? What do you do?
No, you can just use tools like Dig to do that. You will, I guess, you guys will know what you'll expect to see in your DNS records. You'll expect to see your IP address in your A records, and so you'll be able to use a tool like Dig to get access to the answers that are being provided by name servers for for the lookups, and you can record that answer in a script, and if that answer changes, that's where you fire your alert. So give that a go.
Okay, a couple of things. We have found the link, so everyone listening in now, they can see the link directly to the document, the 1 year on active cyber defense. If you look at your screen, you should be able to see the document, Active Cyber Defense, from the National Cyber Security Center. These guys better buy me a coffee. The amount of praise I'm putting for the government, bloody hell. Got to get them to buy me a coffee at least. Okay, folks, this is a couple of other things. Now, Shard, what about you? From the hacking point of view, what should organizations do?
Takeaway from my side, monitor the log, especially log area. That will help your PCIs and GDPR and especially port 53 when you look into this kind of areas. And my second takeaway for you guys to rate limiting, make sure that you have really good rate limiting on your firewall systems or application level and all the layers level, and how the rate limiting should be done, and that will help. This is the two takeaway for you guys to take today.
Okay, thank you. And a couple of other things we have here. Gavin, how do you find out how secure is the registrar? I mean, do the registrars publish their security posture?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question, Amar. I don't actually have a.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Hire me.
Sorry, that's a good question. There are ones I couldn't really. There are specific ones I could call out as being sort of known solid players, but I probably can't. I probably can't do so on this call. But there are definitely. I think I would categorize. I would probably say you pay for what you get. It's cheap to register a domain, and if all you're bothered is about if cost is your driver, go for one of the cheaper registrars. If you are running a sensitive site, I would go for the registrars which have value adds, which have these locking products, which are established players in the space, because there are some established players, but I probably just can't call them out. But price is usually a good indicator.
I guess my challenge, and I'm looking at it from a business owner point of view, I run Cyber Management Alliance, with a very growing team. My challenge is when we are planning on a domain, and I'll be upfront, I'm a cybersecurity professional, CISO, etc., etc. But when we are running a domain, the last thing we think about, we better check if the guys we're going to register the domain with, how good is their DNS security? You see what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's not on the front of my checklist. And as you say, the front of that checklist is money. How much is it going to cost me? And it's an interesting thing to keep in mind always, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's sort of it's this sort of technology that sits there in the background that we all take for granted. But
yeah,
if you hijack it, you can get up to all sorts of mischief.
All sort of mischief, yeah. And I'm sure Naushad is going to talk about mischief on some other webinar. Naushad, I'm going to have to hold you back. We've got one final question, and we're going to have to say goodbye. Is there any way to secure 100% website against DNS tunneling from criminal attackers? Okay, first thing, there is no 100% anything. So I apologize. There might be a 99% or 90% way method. We are towards the end, so I'm not sure what this is. Anyone have a quick answer to this? Is there any way to secure against DNS tunneling? Go on, Gavin.
Look for unusual queue types, unusual query types in your DNS traffic, and also look for really long domain names, because a lot of tunneling toolkits will encode the information that they are exfiltrating in the payload on the left-hand side of the DNS string as a subdomain. So length of your DNS strings is the DNS queries, i.e. the length of the actual query string, is a really good place to start.
Excellent. Naushad, do you agree? I agree.
I agree 100%. The long
Excellent, Gavin. Yeah, long string and the queue response types, that's very, very good. Due diligence review should catch lacking security controls. Yes, it should. But I'll be honest with you, I have from past experience, very few assessments focus on DNS. They focus on all the other... Oops. Okay, sorry, someone's had a fire alarm. I think he better run. Like I said, you can always come back and listen to the webinar. I wanted to thank Gavin Wilson from Nominet and Naushad from wherever he works with, but he's a good guy. He does a lot of ethical hacking. Thank you to everybody listening in. Please do leave us feedback, and the power of DNS, keep that in mind. Give us feedback. That is very profitable for us.
Sorry about that.
And yes, that was Naushad, I know. Make sure you save yourself, buddy. You can always come and listen in later.
It's okay.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, Gavin, thank you so much. Thanks, Gavin.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Naushad, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. God. Fire alarm.